we are. And so today we just really want to start a conversation. I'm working with the Journal of Interprofessional Care as an associate editor to create a special issue looking at issues of power differentials and power dynamics in interprofessional education. And some of this, certainly rose to the surface from what we're hearing from our students and from our workforce training. So this is just a simple quote that I pulled from one of our osteopathic medicine students that indicates coming into any kind of education or training feeling like it's the responsibilities of the doctors to be the leaders and carry the burden of problem solving and caregiving and decision making, and that participation for this student in interprofessional learning helped him to feel less burdened by having to do it all. But there are students who talk about, but we are the last stop, that we are in charge. And we hear from faculty also who say, well, our students, mostly from the medical colleges, but also, physician assistants, advanced nurses, we hear that they come into the program because they want to be the leaders of the team. And so making that transfer from a concept of I'm training you to be the leader to one that is collaborative, that thinks about practice in terms of interdependence, power sharing, collective action, complementarity, and teamwork sometimes is a difficult shift that we find. And thinking about it, and for this presentation today, we're specifically looking at education in the campus-based education and the development of curriculum. So we think about the concepts we're trying to teach. We want them to observe and watch each other interacting and teamwork skills. We want them to begin to understand the roles and responsibilities of others, and also see role overlap as something that improves practice rather than being a competition. We want them to gain confidence. We want them to have respect. All of these concepts that we're trying to build with interprofessional collaborative learning. But what we find that gets in the way, and this and all of these lead back to a sense of power dynamic or power distancing, is that when we don't address it, when we don't address the hierarchical roles and the privileging of roles and the privileging of the kind of information and knowledge that gets shared, it has an impact on the psychological safety of the learning environment. It creates a sense of marginalization. Certain students feel less than others or are made to feel like what they know and what they can contribute is not as important, and that they feel a disrespect for their expertise. They feel that in the curriculum itself, certain voices are privileged over others, where the focus on evidence-based knowledge and particular facts and systems are unquestioned, and that there's not a lot of room for critical analysis or critical questioning. And that in our estimation, in our thinking about this is out of step with what we're trying to achieve with team-based learning, collaboration, and also it doesn't incentivize systems to change, our clinical systems to change, our community systems to change. So this is sort of our working theory. It's finding a common theoretical voice requires a choir, not a solo. And we must offer an effective process for shared learning across programs, not within silos. So we really need to begin addressing the power issues that are there. And I'll just simply fly through many of these things in how we're developing this, because let me again say this is in the process of development. So we're looking at the critical theories that would guide us to begin to address power dynamics and hierarchical obstacles, and ways to begin conversations about how to break these down so that we really are working on a level playing field. And, many of you are familiar with Foucault and the idea of power knowledge, that certain kinds of knowledge, as I said before, are privilege over others. And knowledge not only is what we learn, but it's how we behave. And so thinking about Foucault, thinking about Freyr, and I don't know how many of you are familiar with Freyr. I know in social work, which is my background, Freyr has a lot of influence in thinking about how we should learn and thinking about a form of liberating education, which doesn't dismiss the importance of critical, fact-based, evidence-based knowledge, but it blends it with critical inquiry, active learning, and ways of blending those two to create new knowledge. And it's very much in line with the ideas that Foucault had. And then finally, I was very excited that this was alliterative. They're all F's. We delved into feminist theory and really looking at how feminist theory in education overtly resists power and status, thinks about learning as give and take, and addresses the inequities that exist not only within the systems in which we work, but within the systems in which we learn. And so thinking from that standpoint, we transferred this to, well, how do you take these theories, the synthesis of these theories, which have some similarities, but also have some differences, and which pedagogies, which methodologies make most sense? And obviously, the interprofessional learning literature is rife with ideas about experiential active learning. And so we looked at Kolb's theory of experiential learning, which comes from an adult learning theory perspective, which incorporates critical reflection, observation, analysis, curiosity, but also, and very importantly, that interprofessional education needs to be active and interactive, applied, and demonstrated. We also looked at Fuchs' work on critical reflection and how that also is integrated into learning. And with that, we're thinking about, well, how do you deal with the uncertainty that these theories, these learning ways of learning bring up? Because it isn't just, what is the term, the sage on the stage telling you what the right answer is. It's really the kind of learning that might ask you to question your own belief systems, to encourage you to step into the unfamiliar territory that is out there. So it is a kind of learning that faculty and trainers aren't always that comfortable with. But again, it overtly addresses some of the power issues that we need to think about. And I know Chris has a lot to say about this, but unless we address the power issues that remain subterranean, where some people consider themselves the leaders or the knowledge holders in a way that creates obstacles, we will never have a sense of psychological safety. And that's true both in terms of the learning environment and in the clinical community environment, where when people don't feel psychologically safe, where they don't feel they can speak up because they are in a position considered not as status worthy as others, you see an increase in burnout, you see an increase in medical and clinical error, and you see people not working to their best individual and collective clinical expertise. Other theories that we were playing with are constructivist theory, which again addresses knowledge from many, many sources and really takes in multiple perspectives in coming up with new knowledge and new ideas and innovations, and also a transfer of knowledge, which is composed of many, many people's points of view. And that combined with communities of practice, which really thinks about learning and practice within the context of community, is very consistent with teamwork. And I'm going to skip the feminist pedagogy because I've talked about that a little bit, and I know I only have 10 minutes and I'm talking very fast. But I want to focus on relational learning because it's not a topic I hear a lot. And relational learning really is about how we develop, again, essential psychological safety and relationship with and between learners and with and between those who are teachers and learners. And we create a culture of learning where we are willing to step in the worlds of each other. It's a modality that not only changes what we know from a cognitive perspective, but it's an affective way of learning where we begin to break down some of those silos, some of those hierarchical tensions that have remained underground. So I'm going to conclude in saying that, you know, there is power in education that is a powerful tool to have this knowledge, to learn how to be leaders, to learn skills for teamwork and collective advocacy, and to learn how to create psychological safety is very powerful and is something that we should be promoting through the thoughtful usage and synthesis of theories and practices and attitudes that believe in we all have something to share. We all have valid input into team practice, into team learning. When we don't address it and when it's not acknowledged, then this I believe, and some of our conversations that we're going to have now is a tremendous obstacle to really achieving true interprofessional collaborative learning aims, which are to really understand and respect each other, to develop the psychological safety of learning and the workplace, and that perpetuate a system or systems that are not really open to the kinds of changes that are needed. So that's my quick presentation, and I've provided in the slides a bunch of references. I'm sorry they look so little on the screen here, but I guess we can now open the floor to